Hello and welcome to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. Transfers, it's what we've all been waiting for. How else were we supposed to fill 45 minutes of a podcast during the off-season? Lucas Nmecha has arrived, or will arrive on July the 1st on a free transfer, while Yaka is in the building currently having a medical ahead of becoming Leeds' second signing of the summer window, provided all goes well there. It's quite un-Leeds United like this, isn't it? Getting all this business done early doors. What have they done with the real Leeds United G-Dog?
Stick with Graham, thanks.
I actually got a request this week from someone who said that I should slip that into my intro this week. So
very good.
If you're listening, that's your doing. I spotted that. I liked it. I liked the ring of it.
I had a Leeds United supporting friend at university who coined the phrase G-bomber, which I wasn't very happy with either. Leeds United, very active, aren't they? Very active and busy, but they have to be. They have to be. You know, it's you're probably only talking 20-odd days till pre-season training, until they report back for testing and training at Thorpe Arch. You're talking a month and a day or two until they're in Germany on pre-season camp, by which time they'll already have played against Manchester United. And when you're putting together such a significant body of recruitment work, when you're going into the Premier League and you're completely reshaping your team and putting a brand new spine in it, you cannot afford to have that spine traipsing in on, the 10th of August. And having some sort of having the kind of makeshift side that Farke had. You remember at Ipswich in his first season when you had Drame and you had Shackleton, you had Gelhardt. It just wasn't the team that they were going to go with, and you cannot afford. They could afford it then because they had some star quality in the Championship and enough to get by at that stage, but they cannot afford to do that in the Premier League. And the fixtures are out. We now know that August is tricky. September looks important, and those things just reinforce the view that they need to get players in quickly. So it feels to me like all the requisite urgency is there.
Yeah, and I think that's resonated with the fans as well. I think urgency is the right word. It's a reflection of, especially with the fixtures coming out, you're looking at them going, well, there's not really any months that you describe as easy or going to pick up multiple points in. They're all hard games, but I suppose that's the prize that they've been fighting for the past 2 years, is to be back in this conversation, to be playing against the best. But yeah, should we begin with Lucas Nmecha, as he is the first confirmed arrival that we've got at the time of recording. Kind of came out of the blue, very similar to how the 49ers have done business in the past. Of course, Graham, you got a little lead on that, a nice little exclusive there. I think, do you remember when Angus Kinnear was talking about a B+ window? I think you personally, from a reporting standpoint, you've had a B+ window so far. There's room for improvement, but I'll tell you what, you've been leading the charge. I think it's fair to say.
I'm not going to have you grade my work. That's not how this works. You don't peer underling assessed. Lucas Nmecha. I got a message Sunday morning, which shows how late in the day it was before any of this became knowledge. Leeds were agonisingly close, really, to getting their first deal of the summer done and announced without word coming out in the media. And then, spoke to Leeds, and Leeds confirmed and said, "Yep, we'll be doing this one very soon." Even at that stage, whilst I knew he was in the country to sign, I didn't realise that the announcement would come quite so soon. And it was all done and dusted by, mid-afternoon. First signing through the door. Big and functional, in your words. Obviously, quite experienced now. He's been around the block a little bit. He's had his fair share of injuries in recent times, but he was out of contract at Wolfsburg. And I think the 2-year deal probably reflects a lot about how Leeds see this deal. They see him as a squad player. They see him as a player that, yes, he comes with a bit of an injury CV, as Farke would say. But he's a player that they think can help. And It's an interesting one because it has ramifications, doesn't it? There's a natural question that comes with this transfer when you see a player who's probably going to be on the bench, probably coming on late in games to maybe try and change things, maybe being brought on to try and see games out or to try and rescue a point or go for a win. That's what Patrick Bamford was doing last season. So what does it mean?
Would you like me to answer that?
You can have a go.
I can have a go. I think it probably means that despite the limited impact Bamford had last season, I think he's going to be starting. Is that what you're saying? That Bamford's going to be the starting striker?
I think he'd back himself, but I don't think that's
Yeah.
the situation.
No, I'm only joking. Yeah, I think you look at it's the 25-26 season coming up. You've got to look at the context of Bamford's last couple of seasons, his age, his expiring contract in 12 months, and think, well, the likelihood is, there is a younger model who's in the building now, who can fulfill the same brief that Bamford has done certainly for the past 2 seasons, and yeah. I wouldn't describe it as bleak because I think a lot of people will have seen this coming, that they wanted to refresh their attacking options, and as a result, you can't play 3 strikers at once, can you? So the natural order of things is the striker who played the least in the Championship is probably going to play less in the Premier League, especially when you're bringing in new bodies in that position to rival you. Yeah, I think that's writing on the wall territory, I think.
Yeah, and we should also say that Leeds were keen to stress they are not finished in centre forward shopping this summer, so they are still looking for a centre forward, and you would imagine that will be a starting centre forward that they're looking for, someone to compete with Peru. Although just while you were talking there, I don't think you can rule anything out because we know that with PSR being what it is, that Leeds will certainly weigh up and consider any eventuality that maybe makes a tidy profit if there's a possibility here and there on a player. They're not hell bent on selling an asset to get £20 million pure profit, and that's the only option here. There is scope with other players who would bring in a profit and maybe get a big wage off the books. Those things all help and count too. My feeling is that Peru probably stays, but you just never know this summer. It's going to be a summer where there's going to be, I think, an eyebrow raised or two at what actually goes on, because they've got to make this work. They've got to get in the players they need, almost by whatever means necessary. He's an unproven quantity at Premier League level. We all suspect he's a Premier League finisher,
yeah,
but not perhaps a Premier League all-rounder as a number 9. Doesn't mean there's not a role for him at Leeds next season at all, because what a player to bring off the bench, to have hovering around the edge of the penalty area to finish things off if you're looking for a goal. Yeah, interesting one.
Yeah, another interesting one is Yakabillo. We're recording this ahead of the publication of your piece about his medical. But by the time this goes out, of course, people will have read that and had time to digest the news. What do you make of that then? Again, it's one which has been played out in the media a little bit more. Obviously had a lot of input from people in Italy saying that this has been taking, it's been progressing step by step. He's someone who I think we can safely say is probably going to be a Leeds United player next season, and I think has the potential to potentially be the unsung hero signing of the summer. Assuming that Leeds are going to add a striker and maybe a number 10 as well, I can really see Biol being possibly the most impactful signing in terms of how Premier League ready I think he is.
Well, he's vastly experienced. He's vast in size. They say he's the height of 3 Joe Donohues. That's what the word in Italy is this week. Yeah, so as we're recording, the medical is probably beginning or is underway. and Leeds are working to finalise. They've been working day and night to get this finalised with Udinese. Yeah, I like the look of a big galoot centre back. 6'4". First contact is absolutely massive, and Joe Rodon, he wins his fair share of first contact, doesn't he? At corners, more than his fair share. That was championship level, we know. But having two players who can really compete in the air between Biol and Rodon and Struijk, who's still in the building, we can't forget, and a massive asset, whether that's for a massive asset sale or a ball playing left sided centre back who is also very big and wins a lot of headers. Yeah, they got some real depth as it stands. Once everything's signed, they'll have some real options and decisions at centre back, won't they? And threat from set pieces, which is going to be massive. But I think most important of all is defending set pieces, because if they can be solid at set pieces, that will be a huge tick in the boxes that need to be ticked if you want to stay up.
You've been doing some reading around Bijol this week, and you came across some comments that he'd made previously about wanting to play in the Premier League. He seems to back himself, doesn't he? Which again, I think is a tick in the mentality box.
Yeah, I think his next move was going to be a step up. It was going to be to a team that was playing in Europe or the Premier League, probably. And Leeds fans won't want to hear this, but he's probably, or his people are probably thinking this could be the move before the move to the Champions League or Europa League or whatever. Go in at Leeds, a couple of seasons showing that you're Premier League ready, put together some consistency and go from there. And that's probably grand from a Leeds point of view. If you can bring a player in who helps you stay up, maybe helps you stay up twice, and then you shift him on for a great big fat profit, then it's all been very worthwhile. But yeah, he backs himself. He thinks that his concentration and focus that he brings to defending are his biggest strengths, ignoring the vast elephant in the room that he's massive and can win lots of headers. I imagine that's quite a strength as well.
He can't say that though, can he?
You can say, "Look at me, just look at me."
Look how big I am. Like, really, come on. What do you think I'm going to say my forte is?
Yeah, he could have done that interview a lot more like a early 1990s WWE wrestler, couldn't he? And but yeah, and he also considers himself in the conversation for the strongest and hardest player at Udinese. So Leeds will absolutely have a bit of that. I just want to see him go up for a header with Virgil van Dijk and win it. That for me would be that would be a big marker. Almost as good as a win. It should count really for a point in the actual table. And he'll get the opportunity twice in December, twice in the space of 24 days. Leeds will play at Liverpool, so plenty of opportunity there to go up in the air and try and win one against Liverpool's big man.
What is, looking at the fixtures this morning, what is this utter woke nonsense of not having a game on Boxing Day? To coin a Sean Dyche graphic phrase.
Well, what's going on here? Let's not look a gift horse in the mouth here, Donahue, when most Boxing Days of our adult lives have been blessed or ruined by footballing fixtures. Now, there's a big part of me that loves it because, you've been maybe a little bit of cabin fever, a lot of family, you've done a lot of eating, you want to get out the house. It's a good excuse. But at the same time, it does curtail the festivities somewhat. It does limit your Boxing Day. What's the word? What's a better word than drinking? What's the word that makes it festivities, celebrating, imbibing, indulging.
Imbibing. Yeah. It feels very festive, that word as well.
Yeah, but with no fixture, there's a real opportunity there to imbibe.
Are you saying that Graham Smith is going to absolutely send it this Christmas because there is no Boxing Day game? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's on the calendar. It's written in there. My calendar goes Saturday 20th, Crystal Palace at home. Boxing Day, send it. Saturday 27th, Sunderland away. Sunderland away as well the day after. I mean,
again, it could be a worse trip that
could
from
it?
a geographical perspective.
Yeah.
Couldn't be a worse trip in terms of where you have to go at Christmas, but I actually do have a little bit of beef. Well, again, there was somebody who replied to us after last week's podcast, and it's geographically related, and it was someone who took issue, and rightly so, with you suggesting, again, it's no surprise that someone took issue with something you said and not me, took issue with something you said about Junior Firpo and his Real Betis being his hometown club. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know where this is going. You're going to be like, well, no, obviously I know he's from the Dominican Republic. No, that's not the issue they had. The issue was that when he moved to Spain, he apparently grew up in a place called Benalmádena, and that is his local team, or his hometown club would theoretically be Malaga, because it's actually quite a way away, as I discovered on a map. And it chimed with me because it's almost like trying to convince thousands of people that, a colleague supports Middlesbrough when they don't support Middlesbrough. It's that sort of fake news. But yeah, I just thought I'd shoehorn that one in there.
Let me just have a little quick scan of a interview that I had with Junior Firpo.
I imagine that he definitely knows who his hometown team are. I'm just saying that somebody who I presume lives in Spain. Oh, here we go.
And I quote, "Obviously, apart from my hometown, and team that I grew up with and support, Betis, where I was in the academy and made the first team, and they all loved me, and I will always love them. But I think Leeds for me is like my second house." There you go. There you have it. He's got two hometown teams. One of them is Betis and one of them is Leeds, and that is from the horse's mouth.
Right. Okay. That's me firmly told. And if that was you who sent us a message chastising Graham, that's you been told very, very clearly, very curtly as well, I think it's fair to say. What do you make of the fixtures then? The start, we have obviously Everton at home, Arsenal away, followed by Newcastle at Elland Road. Then you've got Fulham away, Wolves away, Bournemouth at home. As a first six, how are you assessing Leeds' chances in those?
I think firstly, I'm looking forward to that nice moment when Angus Kinnear walks out before the game to the centre circle and kind of slowly turns, clapping above his head to all four sides of the ground. That'll be excellent fun. In the Adam Pope derby. Difficult August because are we anticipating Everton to circle the drain again? I don't think we are. Not quite in the same manner that they have done in recent seasons. I think there'll be a bit more of a solid proposition. Arsenal away. Newcastle at home, very, very winnable game. You can probably bank 3 points just right now from that. And then September is where you really need to be winning games, don't you? Like you've got to come out of September with a great big clutch of points in your rucksack, because Fulham, Wolves, Bournemouth at home, you've got to take something from those.
Yeah, because I think very quickly you can find yourself not cut adrift, but sort of fighting against the tide, really, in the Premier League. So you don't want to be in that bottom three come October, November, and ultimately to avoid that, you need to get points on the board nice and early. I think August is a tough one, but again, look, I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility that Leeds win that opening game against Everton. It's at Elland Road, back in the big time in the Premier League. Atmosphere is going to be absolutely bouncing. And again, like you never know which version of an opponent you're going to face on that first week of the season. Everton might have an absolutely shocking pre-season. They might not get the players in that they want. They might have, a little bit of a hangover from having lost, Jack Harrison's creative influence. They might lots of assists last year. They might not be firing on all cylinders. Leeds, on the other hand, you look at the fact that they're going to have Beale through the door. Who knows who they might get in the next 2 months that they've got pretty much before that opening game. Yeah, I think I right now, looking at that fixture list, I think you can take 3 or 4 points from August, and I think that's a reasonable start.
What I look forward to is I'd love to see Leeds United go toe to toe with Everton's midfield, because Decore won't be there anymore, will he? Like rampaging through and running through them like a great big charging bull. We think that Leeds are going to beef up the midfield with more intensity. We know they're targeting physicality across the team, and they want to play an intense style off the ball and really get stuck into teams. Yeah, you've got to win 10 games, so you've got to beat someone. You can't look through the fixture list and think, probably not going to win that one, probably not going to win that one. And there's always the possibility for a surprise, as long as you get Premier League quality and you have a Premier League quality side. If you have an Ipswich, a Leicester, a Southampton last season, then don't be anticipating any surprises at all. December looks important. January 3rd against Manchester United at home is an interesting one. If transfer deadline day is when is it on January?
The first in January.
Yeah, is it going to be the Friday the 30th, or is it going to be Monday the 2nd of February? Probably I should know that, but I don't.
It'd probably be Monday the 2nd, I imagine.
Yeah, but as it stands, Leeds are playing Arsenal on my birthday, so they have to win that. And then we get to March. Beware the Ides of March. Leeds United against a quartet of European qualified opposition.
Isn't that February?
No, February, sorry. Beware the Ides of February.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's a big month, especially because in March you've got Sunderland at home, Crystal Palace away, Brentford at home. That coming into the final straight, that is a huge span of games. And then you follow that up with April, Man United at Old Trafford, Wolves, followed by Bournemouth on the south coast, and then Burnley in May. That's actually, I think, from March to early May, there's a real opportunity to pick up some points. And if Leeds are, as we suspect, going to be nearer the bottom of the table, that's a great opportunity to build up a head of steam and just pull clear of, the danger zone before what you imagine is going to be quite difficult final three with Spurs away, Brighton at home, and then West Ham away on the final day. Yeah.
And ultimately they'll play, one game at home and one game away against all the other teams.
Yeah. Is there a fixture that you're particularly looking forward to, a standout?
I'd like the Bournemouth game to be timed in a way that I can be sat outside somewhere near the seaside the evening before with a nice meal and a drink, because that's the time for it, late April. That's one that I'm quite looking forward to, as long as it falls nicely. From a journalism point of view, the Manchester United games are always newsworthy, and I think a lot of Leeds fans will look forward to those, and there's a certain intensity that goes with it. And then the first game, the first game of the season, well, I think it's a chance for them to lay a marker down, isn't it? You win that one, and I think it'll probably calm a lot of nerves, and it'll stand the club in very good stead. So it is good that they've not been handed, Liverpool away on the opening day, because whilst that was the fate of Bielsa's promoted team, and they did go there and give Liverpool a bloody nose, Liverpool are very, 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 very good and getting better. So they're to be avoided, I think, on the opening day.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that I'd probably be least looking forward to is Everton away in January, because, don't get me wrong, it's a new stadium, one to check off, but that is going to be possibly the coldest that anyone's ever been at a football ground. The wind coming in off the river. It's mid-January. You imagine Leeds probably haven't picked up too many points in the preceding fixtures. Yeah, that's going to be a trip and a half. Just going back to what you said earlier about physicality and Everton and Doucouré running through the team like a charging bull. We've spoken about the types of players that Leeds are wanting to target this summer, and we've seen that already with the links. We've seen that with the signings. Nmecha and Bijol of both at a lower bound, 6'1" and above. They are a handful, to say the least. You had some news on the latest with Habib Diarra, the Strasbourg midfielder who Leeds had bid for. There was initially the club's position was initially, obviously he's one that they like, but they don't expect him to be done. There wasn't as much optimism when we first put that to them as there was at completing the Bijol one, which we put to them at the same time. Obviously, the centre half has progressed in talks and is probably going to become a Leeds player, whereas Diarra, that seems a little bit more of a complex one.
Yeah, it's in the kind of the reach category. This category of player. Leeds, they have this kind of mantra of trying to do hard things this summer and trying to get players that they think will make a material difference. Players who can help them actually win games in the Premier League, not just come and be Premier League players for one season and then go down, which has been the case for a lot of players in the last couple of years. So he's one they're very much interested in, but he's just in that kind of upper section when it comes to actual obtainability. You watch a lot of football. Do you think do you think the juice is worth the squeeze?
That felt a very barbed comment, almost like you were calling me a loser with no friends. That's the sort of thing that you would maybe say off camera. I think it is worth it. Like, ultimately, the recruitment team have identified the types of players that they want. He's 21 or 20-year-old. He's the captain at Strasbourg. Brighton have been previously linked with him, which is a massive endorsement. If Brighton are after a player that you're also after, you're probably doing something right, because they don't sign bad players, basically. And their European scouting is spot on. So yeah, I imagine so. There's a strong likelihood that he would be a juice that's worth the squeeze. It's just would he be the right player in a team which is going to be battling against the ball a lot of the time? That would be the only question that I would have around him. Should we stay in France and talk about another link that we've had confirmed? Maybe on the left-hand side of the pitch?
Yeah, and I think I'll just make one more comment on Diarra, which then probably leads on to this.
Oh, perfect. We love that.
If Leeds United are going to be against the ball all the time, counter-attacks might become incredibly important. And if Diarra has what has been described as elite acceleration, then that might be a very, very handy tool from taking you from the edge of your box into the opposition half of the pitch very, very quickly, and perhaps catching them in transition. Because there also needs to be, whilst you want to be big and strong and resolute and solid, there has to be an attacking element to this team and outlets for Leeds and ways of getting down the pitch quickly. And to that end,
Gabriel Goodmanson, come on down to Elland Road. No, that's a bit premature, but he is a player that Leeds like, the left back at Lille, Swedish international. We've described him as a fun player. We initially got the link, what was it, last week, and then sort of did some digging, tried to check it out a bit more, and had a watch, see what he's about. And I said to you, look, having watched him for about 5 minutes of one game that I watched, I went, I think there's something in this link, because he's exactly the type of player that Leeds are going to need at left back. I mean, they don't currently have any contracted beyond the end of this month. So first of all, that's a big tick in. Is this one probably a credible link? Yeah. But also the style that he brings. He's someone who's going to make lots of runs ahead of the ball. He's going to support attacks. He's going to be good in transition. He's he tries a lot, which I think you're going to need. It's like you say, it's all well and good having that solidity at the back, but ultimately you're going to need players that maybe have that little bit extra. And I think while he'd be one of the more unspectacular signings, so getting mixed up there, I do think that he is one who would be a solid addition. And ultimately, you need a squad. So even if they bring in two left backs and Goodmanson is okay, we actually think we can win this game, let's put our more attacking left back on the pitch. You need a squad, and he definitely adds something that they're definitely going to lose with Firpo, considering how much he contributed to attacks and playing a little bit inverted and contributing in terms of goals and assists last season. I mean, what was your read of the Goodmanson link in that situation, Graham?
I think it's an early stage one, so it's one that they've tracked, one that they've looked at and identified, one they're very, very keen on and interested in. But it's not the one that we can say right now is going to follow Beale through the door. So there's not a great deal else to say about a deal at this stage. I saw a really lovely graphic on him and his passes into the area, and they all looked like kind of Junior Firpo low slid balls, across the 6-yard box or into the area. So it'd be nice to have someone doing that, because that was always such a lovely feature of Daniel Farke's team for the last season and a half, certainly, once Firpo got himself fit. Creativity is just, when you lose a player like Firpo, you do need to replace that strength that he brings. And I am going to be very sad, actually, to see Junior. I never thought I would be saying that after the first season, but I will genuinely miss watching Junior Firpo play for Leeds, because he was so exciting in the Championship. And of course, that's no guarantee that he's going to be just as exciting in the Premier League, but he has very, very good offensive skills. And that whole popping up as a 10 and as a 9 was a joy to watch. Leeds did put an offer on the table for him, but as we've discussed in previous pods, it reflected the kind of squad status that they would have attached to him this season. And like we intimated weeks ago, Real Betis were probably going to put something better on the table, and others were going to put something better on the table, and Leeds fully expect him now to go to Real Betis. And of course, with Sam Byram, it's a similar situation, really. Whilst there's no kind of imminent deal for him at another club, as far as we're aware, Leeds have put the ball in his court, and there's no sign of a deal yet. So he's evidently considering his options, which doesn't mean he won't. Doesn't mean he won't sign for Leeds as a squad player and a backup option. But there's certainly nothing doing right now.
You mentioned Junior's offensive skills there. I can think of someone else who has offensive skills, but maybe in a different sense. The ability to offend. I wonder who that could be in relation to. What else do we have on our list? I mean, there's been so much in terms of actual, transfer news and talks and developments that I feel like we're having to probably quite unfairly cram quite a lot in this week. But it's better to be talking about it than not. There was the link over the weekend, wasn't it, to Noah Siddiqui, the Royal Union Saint-Gilloise midfielder, 20-year-old Congolese international, played 55 times for them last season as they won the Belgian Champions League, the Belgian Championship. There was a bit of a back and forth on Twitter, wasn't there, Graham? Will they, won't they? Did they? Didn't they? Our understanding was that Leeds had not bid for Siddiqui, while he is a player that they admire. He's on a list of targets. What our understanding was from people on both sides of the deal, that a bid hadn't been lodged at this stage. Of course, we have colleagues who I imagine are very diligent journalists as well on the continent. They suggested that a bid had been lodged. I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So,
well, I mean, ultimately, it's largely irrelevant, isn't it? And whilst it might be a case of semantics, because one person's offer is another person's, do you think that maybe we're looking at this X million euros for this player? and that's not a fax. It's not an email. It's not an actual tabled physical offer. But the other thing I would say is that if I was a side in Belgium with a talent that I felt like I could sell for profit, and I was a club that was very good at doing that, then I would certainly not be keen to downplay the idea that a Premier League club had bid. I would be shouting from the rooftops through journalists. I wouldn't be doing the shouting myself. I'd be passing the word to journalists, sending them to the rooftops to shout that Leeds United in particular had bid for this player, because then all of Leeds' rivals, if they had not already been looking at Siddiqui, will then take a look and think, why are Leeds going for this player? And is he someone that we could look at? Or players more established in the Premier League rat race might look and think, is he a player we could look at? So either way, they're very interested and they like him. But again, like Goodmanson, there's not a great deal else to say in terms of deals pending or anything like that.
I did quite enjoy, there were a few exchanges on Twitter in response to the story about Siddiqui, a few suggesting that the YEP are simply mouthpieces for Leeds United Football Club. I mean, look, I'm not going to say that we hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to fact checking and making sure that the story's correct, but I think we did our due diligence on that one, didn't we, Graham? I think it's fair to say that we probably had a bit of a unique insight into the Siddiqui link compared to where others may not have had that link.
Maybe it does help sometimes to have a complete nerd in the stable, a complete European football nerd getting involved in things. Twitter back and forth. So I think they're a bit, I don't know, 2022, 2023. I don't think they're for me this summer. And as for being mouthpieces for the club, I think if you were to ask Leeds United, they would probably much rather that we didn't write anything about transfers until we had a picture of a player in a Leeds shirt beside the honours board at Elland Road, or behind a desk with a contract signed in front of him. And we would like to write much more detail and much more early stuff than Leeds United would be comfortable with. So there has to be a relationship, between the two, because it doesn't stand Leeds in good stead if we're putting stuff out that's inaccurate. So it serves them to be somewhat open with us, but at the same time, I think they'd probably rather have got Nmecha announced without any kind of thunder being stolen, because that's the dream for a lot of clubs. They want to do what Liverpool have done a couple of times and manage to, out of nowhere, just announce a signing that nobody had. But people talk in football, don't they? Lots of people talk, and I think what you have to be really careful about is why people are talking and why it might benefit that person to say that Leeds are interested or Leeds have bid. There's a lot of agent-led stuff already this summer. I feel like the early part, before the window opened, and maybe in that week where there was the Infantino window, that was when there was a lot of noise, but not too much in the way of substance or Leeds United activity linked to that noise. Whereas now, they're very much linked to the noise because they're busy little beavers.
Yeah. Speaking of links, one that relates to Leeds in terms of a sell-on clause. You've written a story this morning about Charlie Cresswell and there being interest in him from fellow clubs on the continent. He's obviously with Toulouse, but Leeds inserted a sell-on clause last summer when they sold him. What's the detail with that?
Yeah, obviously it's been pretty widely reported that Cuomo are keen on Cressy. He's had one season in the French top flight, played a lot of football, just shy of 30 starts, I think, in Ligue 1, which is exactly what he wanted. It's exactly what he went for, was to be a regular starter in what is a Big Five league in Europe. And I think credit to him for making that plunge, because I think a lot of players his age would have been a little bit more parochial in their approach to leaving Leeds United. You know, they might have just gone, I'll go to Millwall, where they absolutely love me, and I'll play every game, and I'll prove I'm a championship player. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but there's just something a little bit more adventurous, I think, about going to Toulouse and saying, you know what, I can back myself to play in a top flight, and experience a new culture.
Graham, we've been to Millwall. Come on. You're telling me, right? You're telling me it was going to be a difficult decision to go, where should I go on holiday this year? Cold Blow Lane or a French winery in Toulouse?
Yeah, okay, but we're talking about career decisions, aren't we? It's not all just about the restaurants and the establishments. And I would like to stress, because there is a small chance that we'll be back at Millwall in just over a year's time, that there's nothing wrong with Millwall going to Millwall. What I'm saying is, it's a different route to take, and it's one that I like, and I think it's paid off, because Serie A, again, probably a step up, isn't it? It's a step up, I think, from a mid-table Ligue 1 side to go to Serie A, and I mean, it'd be fantastic for him. Be really, really good. And if they are willing to pay 10 million plus for him, then again, it does his profile wonders, because it suggests to everyone this is a serious player here. And it's good for Leeds as well, because they've got a 15% sell-on clause in the deal, so they will benefit from the profit that Toulouse make if he goes.
Yeah, it's always good to know that you're going to get a little kicker from previous transfer dealings further down the line. It always helps with the bottom line on the old P&S. What else do we have to discuss this week, Graham? Before we wrap up, is there anything else you got burning desire to discuss?
What do I want to talk about? Just talk about feelings. We could talk about our feelings a little bit. I'll tell you what we could talk about. We talk about feet pics and how I don't ever want to see another human foot other than my own for the rest of my days. Because some of the photos that were sent to me by people who did the square ball Gary Speed walk for Andy's Man Club, those were horrendous, horrific, inhumane. They resembled something more akin to what you might find on the abattoir floor than on the end of somebody's leg. It was not good.
Oh my God.
The pain level involved must have been just horrendous. So if I was wearing a hat, I would take it off, and I should be wearing a hat in this weather, shouldn't I? But well played to everyone who started the Gary Speed Walk and everyone who finished it. Your effort levels are superhuman, and the fundraising has surpassed 50 grand, which I think is absolutely magnificent for a really, really worthwhile cause. You know, we ran a lot of stories last week with just simply the words of people doing the walk and why they were doing it, and it said it all about how important it was. So yeah, very, very well done from us to them.
Yeah. Just to emphasize how I can be a filter sometimes for Graham, you know, looking at my colleagues, I received a message from a long-time friend of the pod who said, does Graham want to see my pal's feet, who was medically required to stop with 2 days left because his feet were so bad? I can't tell you what I replied in response. It wouldn't be appropriate for the podcast. But yeah, I spared you from that. I didn't see the feet either, so I'm absolutely delighted by that. We were then talking about transfers, and this same person said, and I quote, "That's not very HMS piss the league." So I think if you're listening, and Graham, I think you can probably imagine who that might be. But if you're listening, there's your annual shout out on the Inside Ellen Road podcast.
The other story I like this week is the campaign to get Sergeant Wilco his statue. Howard Wilkinson, whose legacy at Leeds United doesn't just extend to what he did as a manager while he was here, in terms of the team on the pitch and the success they had in promotion and winning the First Division title 2 years later, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine a team that went up this summer winning the Premier League in 2 years' time?
No, like that's
No,
pie in the sky
I don't
territory.
think even Parag can imagine that. Even if sat outside on the balcony of his office, with the sun going down and a cool breeze and maybe a beer in his hand, I don't think his mind even would stray there. So yeah, what Wilkinson did on the pitch was incredible, but also, he was the brains trust behind Thorpe Arch and having an academy, a modern academy that has produced so many players for the club and had a long-reaching legacy impact for Leeds United. So a campaign has begun. Wilco 92. They do have a website, and the campaign began in earnest this week with an event at the Peacock. Wilkinson was there with some of his ex-players and some of the people behind the campaign. And though he himself, as he told the Square Ball, would be happy just to have a meal at the Flying Pizza with some of his chosen guests, I think he very much appreciates the effort that people are going to on his behalf. And it is something that Leeds United really could. There's an easy win here for Leeds United to say that we'll either match your fundraising and the statue will get built, and any money left over will go to a charity of his choosing, or we'll simply pay for the statue and it will make it part of our new ground schemes. Something for Howard, something for Eddie Gray, and there are others as well who could definitely stand to be recognised permanently in a really nice way at Elland Road.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to finish, I think. Thinking about the past, looking ahead to the future. If that's all from you, Graham, then I guess that all that leaves for me to do is to wrap up. Thank you for listening to the Inside Elland Road podcast. Thank you for sending Graham your feet pics. That's hilarious and has filled me full of joy knowing that he's had to receive those. Great fundraising effort. And we'll be back next week with hopefully more news of Leeds United transfers, links, and ideally another one through the door. Cheers. Bye for now.